You've likely noticed the math of your daily life no longer adds up. Wages are staying flat, while the price of everyday essentials like groceries and rent quietly drain your purchasing power. Economists often treat this as a purely domestic phenomenon, the result of local interest rate shifts or temporary supply chain issues. But the physical paper in your pocket represents a much larger architecture. The US dollar functions as the primary operating system for the entire global economy. Nearly 90% of all global foreign exchange transactions use the dollar. If Brazil buys from Japan, they must convert to US dollars first. This forced demand allows the Treasury to print trillions in new currency, while the global market absorbs the inflation. For decades, this arrangement acted as a safety valve, insulating Americans from the consequences of massive government spending. The rising costs in your bank account today suggest that this safety valve is finally reaching its structural limit. This system was built in the 1970s. After the US abandoned the gold standard, it needed a new way to ensure the world still wanted its fiat currency. The solution was the petrodollar. Through a pact with Saudi Arabia, oil, the world's most essential commodity, became priced exclusively in dollars. This forced every nation on Earth to stockpile US currency just to secure their energy supply. This created a double loan loop. Oil-producing nations took their dollar profits and reinvested them directly into US Treasury debt. Foreign nations weren't just buying our goods, they were subsidizing our ability to borrow. Relying on this guaranteed demand, the United States has spent decades funding multi-trillion-dollar deficits, essentially betting that the rest of the world would never stop buying our debt. This chart tracks the Congressional Budget Office's newest projections, and the trajectory is unsustainable. The U.S. national debt is on track to hit $53 trillion, or 120% of the entire economy, by 2035. As the red line climbs, the area below it illustrates the true crisis: interest payments. By 2035, the U.S. will spend $1.8 trillion every year just to cover the net interest on what it has already borrowed. To cover those interest payments, the government must print increasingly massive amounts of money. This process actively dilutes the value of the currency in your pocket to pay for the debts of the past. Foreign adversaries are watching this debt spiral and the U.S. weaponization of sanctions, and they are now engineering an escape from the dollar system. The BRICS alliance, now including major energy players like Iran and the UAE, is the primary architect of this movement toward a parallel financial ecosystem. Their strategy centers on replacing the Western-controlled SWIFT system with an alternative called CIPS, the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. This diagram shows the mechanical shift. While SWIFT is a messaging system that still relies on US dollar accounts to settle the actual value, China's CIPS is a full clearinghouse. It moves the funds, specifically yuan, directly between banks. This bypass is already active. Russia and China now settle over 90% of their trade in local currencies. They have effectively cut the US dollar out of their economic relationship entirely. Global trade is undergoing a calculated fragmentation. As the world stops requiring the dollar as a middleman, the US loses its mechanism for shifting its inflation onto other nations. Macroeconomic projections from J.P. Morgan suggest the dollar's long-standing overvaluation is beginning to unwind, potentially leading to a 20% decline against major currencies like the euro and yen. For Americans, a weaker dollar means the price of everything we buy from abroad, electronics, clothing, and energy, will skyrocket. Borrowing costs will also shift. Without infinite foreign demand to buy our treasuries, the government must keep interest rates high to attract buyers. This will permanently elevate the cost of your mortgage and car payments. America is approaching the end of its era of exorbitant privilege. In this new reality, the U.S. government will have to pay for its debts without the safety net of global currency dominance. For 50 years, our standard of living was supported by a world that had no choice but to use our money. That era of mandatory demand is ending. If the invisible architecture of the global economy is quietly turning against the dollar, is your personal financial future truly secure?